If you have been working with React for a while, you'd know that React has a special prop name for the JSX that gets passed under a parent component, and that's called children. Given that children is the plural of child, devs are tempted to treat it as an array, to do array operations such as map. While sometimes it is an array, it's not always the case, and still, when it is, working with it directly can cause you problems. In this video, I will show you how to properly work with the children prop. So yeah, let's get into it. I just initialized a React project here for us. And I just want to highlight that we're going to cover 5 APIs because these are the only APIs that are exposed by React to work with children. There's React exposes a children object, I believe. And then from there, we have 5 functions: count, to array, for each, map, and only. Personally, I think map is the one that's most useful and most people are going to use. However, we'll be covering all of them. So let's start with count. Right, guys, so starting with the React.Children.count. Here I have the app that I just created and I added some stuff. We have a menu.group and a menu.item. Let's check out these components. So menu.item is simply like a wrapper, like a view with some text, and text is passed as children. And you can see it here on the right hand side, for example, item 1, right? The text is styled to be white and the container has some background color and padding. And then here we have menu.group, which contains these items. Let's check out what that looks like. Basically, we wrap the children that are passed, the items, and then at the top we have a text that we show the item count, as you can see here on the top of the items. And then we just have a container that wraps everything and adds in some gap. Now, as you can see here, I'm trying to get the children, like the count of the children, right? And I'm using children.length. Here, children is typed as React.React node, which is usually what's common to use for the children prop. However, here we get a type error and says children is possibly null or undefined. So one solution for that would be to use array.isArray, right? We could use this API to check if children is an array. And if that's the case, we get its length. And as you can see, the type error went away. However, what would happen if we were to just add in one item, right? Let me save here. And as you can see, the title went away. And that's because the children is no longer an array. Like we were assuming that the children is passed as an array, but that's really like implementation detail to React that we should not really care about. So let me undo this change here. So the correct way to do it is to use the React.Children.count. And this will return to you the number of children that is passed using this children prop. Let's try and remove the 3 items to have only one. And as you can see, we have one and it shows us that there's only one item. And if we were to, for example, to remove all of them, we would see 0. And that's because we are using the API. We're just asking it for the count and it gives it to us. We don't make any assumptions of the shape of children. Is it an array or not? That's internal to React, and React tells us how many like count of children there is. Now let's check out the map API. Let's say we would like to add a separator here between each of the items. What we could do is we can go into the item and add a border bottom. But the thing is, we'd have to know that not to add it to the last one, right? Because we only want to add like a separator between the items and not at the end. So instead, what we could do is we could go to the menu group here, and instead of rendering the children, we could take the child, map over it, and wrap it inside a view and add a border bottom. So let me show you how this would look like, for example. Here we would take the children, we map over them, I create another wrapper, right? And I check if the index is if the index equals to the last item, like children count -1, I don't add any styling. Otherwise, I add a styles.child container, which basically just adds a border bottom width of 1 and some border color. Now this works fine, right? As you can see here, we achieved that. There's a separator between all of them. However, there are three issues with this implementation. First of all, we have a type error. As we can see here, we get the children is possibly null or undefined. We could go back and do the same thing we did before and check it's an array or not. But as you know, this is not really a good solution because if it's one item, it's not an array, otherwise it is. And basically you should leave this to React. The other issue, so this is actually the other issue is if we have only one child is passed, because here we are mapping over it. So if we go and remove these three, we'll get an error because Children.map is not a function, right? It's not an array, and then you get an error and it would crash for the user, right? So that's not good. And the third issue is that you would get a warning about the key prop. So let me here like quickly refresh, right? As you can see here, it says warning, each child in a list should have a unique key prop. And yes, if you've been working with React for a long period of time, you'd know about this. However, since we are rendering our list of items statically and not dynamically, like we are mapping to kind of create an array, we really shouldn't need to pass in a key, right? The key should be passed when you're creating an array of items dynamically and the orders could change and something like that. So this error shouldn't be there really. And that's just because we are implementing the mapping in a wrong way. So let's see how we could fix this. The correct way to do it is with the React.Children.map, right? So React.Children exposes a map function to us, which takes in the children as the first argument, and then a callback as the second argument. The callback gets the child and its index. And from here, we can do exactly the same thing that we did. However, this fixes for us the type issue. And if we go ahead and try and just render one item, it still works. Even though we are mapping, it's not an array, but we don't care. This is the API that React gives to us. It handles it internally. So let's go ahead and return the items before. So let's go ahead and try and restart here. And you see we don't get the error about the key. And that's because also React is handling this for us. However, if we were to go and create an array dynamically here, now if we try to go and do it this way, the dynamically create an array of item, we still get the error, which is expected. This is what we want, right? If someone is using this component of ours and creating some list of items dynamically, we should get the error. And here it's being handled correctly for us. When it's static, we do not get an error. Let me refresh again, nothing. But when it's dynamic, we get the error. And that is because we are using the React.Children.map API. An alternative solution to map, for example, if you want to achieve this separator, is to use the other, the third API, which is forEach. Again, here we have children.count. And then here we're creating a new children array, right? So we're going to create a new children from our children that is passed. And the way that we're going to approach this time is instead of wrapping each item in another component, we're adding a separator underneath it, right? So as you can see here, we're calling React.Children.forEach, again, accepts the children, gives us a callback with the child and index. So what we are doing here is we are pushing the child in, right, that we get, and we check if the index is less than children count -1. So if it's not the last one, then push in a view with a certain key. Now, as you can see here, we need to pass in the key for extra stuff that we are adding. This one is handled for us, right, by React. However, extra stuff that we add, we need to add the key because we are adding stuff dynamically here and not statically. And the only thing we're adding here is a style of separator. Again, it's just a height of 1, background color. And then we're returning this new children instead of the children count. And again, we get the same behavior. So instead of map, where you get the child and return a new child, with forEach, you can do something for every child. And what I'm doing here is I'm pushing the child and adding something else. So creating a completely new array, but you can also do anything here, for example, side effects or whatever. It's basically just a for each loop. Let's say the for each and the map APIs are not enough for you. You want to go wild. You want children to be an array and just use it the way you want. Pop, push, reverse, whatever array API there is for you, you just want to use it. So let's say, for example, I have here these children and I want to reverse the order. I mean, technically speaking, you could change the flex direction, right, to, I believe, reverse row or row reverse, and column reverse, and then there you go. It's like it works, right? But just for the sake of example, let's say we want to do that without styling, like just with arrays. What we could do is another API from React, and that is React.Children, yep, thank you, to array. And with this, we really have an array here, and we can do whatever you want. You can see here all of the methods that we have on arrays. So let's say reverse, right? And with this, you can see that we reverse the array. If I undo the change, we're back to 1, 2, 3, 4. And yeah, so that's that's React.Children.toArray. You give it the children, you get an array, do whatever you want, just go wild. And the last API from React.Children is the only API. And what this does, when passed to children, it returns the only element that is supposed to be passed in the children. So it expects that only one React element is passed as children, and if more than one JSX element is passed, it throws an error. So this is kind of more like an enforcing that only one element should be passed. So for example, as you can see here, I'm having only one menu item. If I were to add the other items, we would get an error. And this error would say, React.Children.only expected to receive a single React element child. However, one thing to make, to be aware of, if we wrap this in a fragment like this, we technically fix the problem, but this is not really what this is probably meant for. Like this example where you have a list of items is definitely not the use case for React.Children.only. Maybe like, for example, in a control or like control element, or maybe a wrapper element where it's supposed to have only a single child, then you can use this and enforce to have only a single child. But I just wanted to cover it for the sake of completeness, because with this one done, these are literally all of the APIs that React.Children exposes. Now that we reached the end of the video, I hope that you are more comfortable using, manipulating, and working with the children pop in React. If you thought this video was useful, make sure you give it a like and subscribe if you would like to keep up with the channel. That would really motivate me. If you have any feedback for me, please make sure to leave it in the comments, and thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.